Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Am reading video for Friday, July 9th, 2021. Since this is my first Friday reads of a sort of the month, I will start by highlighting my literary newsletter of last month of June, wherein I have snippets from all of the Goodreads reviews of all the books I've read in June. I have a book pick, a book meme, all that sort of good stuff. And now I can go and leave that all behind and head on into the second half of the year, because that's where we are now. Oh my gosh. Well, some things are rolling over. I continue to very slowly eke through this collection of short stories by Dorothy Parker, which I started in May. This week I read The Last Tea, which was written in 1926. It's about a young couple, I guess, that's meeting over tea at a date. But they almost immediately just start denigrating each other and trying to one-up each other in a way. Like, he starts talking about this other woman who, he's really attracted to. And so she butts in with, getting together with this guy that she's really attracted to. And, every now and then she tries to sort of subtly insult this other woman who she knew in school or something. But basically, I think the whole thing is basically him kind of being very insulting and talking about, this other woman on a date, and her trying to, brush it off and say, basically with this, oh, well, I have a million calls and a dinner with this other guy, to basically say, oh, I don't really care, this is beneath me, you don't matter to me at all. So it's a comedy of manners. I think it's something I think Parker's was well known for. Sticking with short stories, I finished this collection of 6 short stories, Athletic Shorts by Crutcher. I held this up in a recent video I did where I read the first short story in this collection and a couple of short stories in other collections that I read every July. I'll link the video down below. The short story I read in this collection was turned into one of my favorite movies, Angus, which was released in the mid-90s. And unsurprisingly, I find I prefer the movie to the book. Would take a lot to live up to it, but I was glad that some of the witticisms and some of the morality of a sort made it from the story into the movie. And I was intrigued by some elements that weren't in the movie, particularly about gay parents. And, this story was written in the 80s, so, it was much more controversial then. Although I do feel like the gay parents thing was kind of gimmicky. I didn't really think it added much to the story. But the strongest story in this collection also dealt in gay themes. It's called In the Time I Get, and it's about a teen boy who goes to his summer job, and it turns out his boss's nephew has returned to, small town middle America after contracting AIDS, and he's dying, and, he's gay. And, at first the main character, treats him like, he's a pariah, like, ew, you're a homo and you're sick and that's gross. And then he gets to know him, and, in those moments before he dies, or, the time before he dies, and, he has a backstory himself, actually, about losing a girlfriend to death. So I guess that's supposed to make him a little more sympathetic or more open to sympathy, because a lot of what they do kind of talk about is, what it's like to be approaching death, and sort of most of the world, or, people you knew turning on you because, being gay was such a stigma back then in a lot of circles. And so the main character is also coming across like he's a footballer, and like his best friend is, engaging in the same normal homophobia, and he's having to struggle with, like, am I going to admit that, I'm getting closer to this guy who, everyone's gonna, rail on me for getting close to. And so it's, I don't know, I thought it was pretty well done. There was another story in here that tried to deal with racism, and I don't necessarily think it met the mark. And a couple of other stories I generally felt meh about. My second favorite story in here, the second strongest, would be The Pin, which is about a teenage wrestler who is able to challenge his macho father to a match, and he actually wins against the old man, even though the old man, is puffed up on ego and, exercise regimens. And it goes into toxic masculinity and, relations between fathers and sons. And I thought that one was pretty well done. And in general, the collection was interesting. It's not the usual sort of short story collection I read, because this is contemporary YA, but contemporary YA from the 80s, which is, geared toward, teenage athletes, to male athletes. And it just doesn't seem like it's necessarily what most YA would be like today. I think it certainly spoke to a certain time period, and it's good to get that perspective as well. Next, going more officially into the realm of historical fiction, I am 300 pages into this book, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. My mother's wanted me to read this book for years now. She read it first years ago and loved it, and she finally, put it on our list for our mom and auntie's book club. My mom and aunties. And she also put it on the list for her other book club. She really wanted to reread it and get everyone to read it, I guess. It was kind of a slow start, I think, because we kind of start in the middle of things and are dealing with very specific situations with two separate narrators. But, after a little bit of time, I did start to get into this book, and it moves surprisingly quickly for such a long book. There's very short, flighty chapters, really, where we're predominantly following the two main characters, teenagers, a German boy who basically enters the Reich, as it were, through Hitler Youth, and then a French girl who is blind and has a father who is involved in securing a rare diamond for a museum, and they end up having to flee Paris when, Germany occupies France during the war, and move in with an elderly great uncle. And then this diamond comprises another plot where the Nazis are after the diamond. It almost feels a little Indiana Jones-ish, that part of it. It's not really as compelling to me, I think, as watching these two young teenagers go through very different sorts of trials. And they're both, good people at heart, but, having to go through either the injustices of occupation or, this rigorous system of cruelty and xenophobia and violence from Hitler Youth. I read a fair bit of Holocaust fiction, and I've read a couple novels, I think, especially YA actually, of the situations in like China and Korea from the occupation from the Japanese in World War II. But in truth, I haven't read much about the European experience of World War II that doesn't pertain directly to Jews. So I feel like this really was a good experience for me to get more of a sense of what it was like for other types of people. You can tell that a lot of historical research went into this novel, so that's very impressive. Though in general, I don't think I'm completely in love with these characters and obsessed with them. It might be the flighty nature, or even the plotty nature, because this is, by default, a book that has to do a lot with external plot, and not quite as much with internal character development. I mean, there is some, obviously, but not as much, and I know that's a personal bias of mine, that I prefer the internal character development. Although I also do appreciate, novels that can teach me more about, sweeping history and these sorts of important historical events, which are external conflict. So, conundrum. Well, not really. I think it just comes down to that this probably won't be a favorite of mine, but I'm very much enjoying it, and I imagine that it'll be a great conversation in the book club in a couple of weeks, I think it'll be. Anyway, I will check back about my thoughts about the rest of this book next week. And sticking with historical fiction, I'm moving further and further back, because next on the docket I'm going with this one. This is Half-Life by Jillian Cantor. This is a book I highlighted in my Goodreads Choice Awards TBR of historical fiction, which I will link down below. It takes place in the 1800s and is an alternative history of Marie Curie, about what her life might have been like if she hadn't gone on to study science but had settled down to marry and perhaps have children. Well, I think it's a split history, really. We get the real history, or or fictionalized to a minor degree, I suppose, history of her actual life, juxtaposed against what could have been if she had not gone on to be an amazing scientist to, change the field forever. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. So that about covers it for me now. Have a kind of busy weekend coming up, it seems. At least a few things on the docket, which will take me out of the condo and into DC, where more things are opening up to the public again. So looking into some of those events. I will be back on this channel in the next few days to do a booktube spin video, which I was intending to do at the end of the month, but on a whim, I searched and I saw that Rick McDonnell, who started the booktube spin, did his spin a little early this iteration, so I figure I should step up and do the same, so stay tuned. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.